It's Dew Time with Pastor Steph.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Rise and shine. You're on with this Dew Time with Pastor Steph. How are you this morning? That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. For this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. So, where were you yesterday? Yesterday was Let's Talk About It Tuesday Church Folk Day. And there was some conversation. Yes, we did talk about it. We talked about the LA ice raids and how they are out there going buck wild. Yes, setting cars on fire, people getting arrested from left to right. LA Mayor Karen Bass is unhappy with the way the ICE people are handling things. But here's the problem. She and her protesters they're not happy, but listen, when you did the sweep, they pulled up all kinds of criminals. We've got several criminals. Let me see if I can find some of these criminals for you. You've got 49-year-old man from back in 1994 who he and his gang shot up an entire group of people because they were unhappy that they were not allowed at the party. Yes, remember that? People used to do that back in the day. Yeah, thank God that doesn't happen a whole lot anymore. You got 44-year-old Mexican national who had been convicted of sexual battery. Another 51-year-old Mexican national convicted of assault with a deadly weapon with great bodily harm. You got the 55-year-old Mexican national who was also arrested over the weekend, and he had been convicted for firing a weapon in an inhabited dwelling, battery of a spouse or a cohabitant, and willful cruelty to a child. You know, these type of people keep the sweeps going because, see, once they see that if they do sweeps, this is where it will land, they're not going to stop doing sweeps because this is what it's made of. Finding those people who we have not been able to find. Now, I'm still asking this question. All these people have been convicted of some heinous crime. But my question is, well, why weren't they in jail? Can somebody please help Pastor Steph understand? How are these people like out in plain sight, able to get swept up? Man, you should be hiding underneath non-rocks somewhere where I don't care what they did, they could never pull you out. I don't get it. Well, something is really, really, really wrong because you have a group of protesters who, like it was said yesterday, they're just jumping to the cause that there have been some innocent people who have been swept up. They know that these people aren't innocent in a sense. The other people, I'm not talking about those real hard criminals. There was a statement in the news that said they're illegals, not immigrants. Something weird to that effect. Or they're immigrants, not illegals, something like that. And listen, when you got to start making a distinction between what kind of criminal they are, you know, okay, so immigrants simply say that they've migrated from another country to the United States. Doesn't mean that they don't have legal paperwork and things like that. It means that they're just simply that, just immigrants. It doesn't make them illegal. But that's what's happening here. In the hundreds of thousands of illegals here in America, you are finding just simple immigrants. And unfortunately, they're getting swept up. And you really got to go back and listen to yesterday's conversation, because a lot of interesting conversation took place. There's there's a concern that people who are just here illegally are separated from those who are here illegally and commit these kind of crimes. And Pastor KL raised the issue of, when you're a criminal, which an illegal is, no matter how we slice this pie, it is what it is. They are criminals. And when you are locked up, there is no door A, door B, door C. No, in a general prison, jail, whatever you call it, because they make distinctions of the two. To me, you're locked up, you're locked up. Who cares what you call it? Yeah, it's there's the heartbreaking feeling, that these people, they're just here trying to get a better lifestyle and da da da. Well, unfortunately, I'm on the side of Pastor KL. I'm not saying I don't in a way feel sorry that they're locked up, but in a way I'm not sorry. You are illegally here. You came over here. You took the chance that you would get caught. Because anytime we commit a crime, we take that chance. And they took the chance. They gambled. Well, yesterday I brought up this situation with sin and how God sees sin. And God does not look at the gradation of sin the way we do. We have that at least factor. Well, at least I didn't, murder anybody. I only stole from my family. My family need to eat. We fell on hard times. Sin is sin. God looks at it as sin. And that's just the bottom line. And unfortunately, yeah, everybody's looked at as the same. So, you know what, protesters, I get your point. But listen, step back and let these people do their job. Because, clearly the mayor is not doing her job, because I'm trying to figure out, I've got people walking around on my street, my next door neighbors, my neighborhood with these type of criminal behaviors. Please sweep them up. I don't care where they come from. They could have come from their mother's womb right in the hospital on the corner. It doesn't make a difference to me. Get the criminals and put them in jail. So, are you blocking justice? Yeah, I get the whole concept of, some innocent people are being swept up and so forth and so on. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, that's the way of life. We all are suffering here, one way or another. So that was our conversation for Let's Talk About It Tuesday. Go back and watch or go back and listen. Okay? Well, today is Wednesday, y'all. It's the middle of the week. We made it. And unfortunately, we're not going to have our girl Vivian with her socially conscious segment, but there's always a ram in the bush. We got our girl Shantice in the mix, and she will be doing some news today. So listen, we're grateful We're grateful for everything we get. And I am going to send you off to get that healthy breakfast. Go tell somebody that It's Due Time with Pastor Steph is on. And whatever you do, don't go anywhere because we will be right back.
Juice for my gut and liver health every day as a doctor, and here's why. I'm a board-certified gastroenterologist, so hit that follow button for more tips like this. And it's tart cherry juice. And this juice is really unique because even as a juice, it has a really high anthocyanin and polyphenol content. In fact, it might be the most out of any juice. And gut bacteria can use this to produce anti-inflammatory compounds in the gut. So much so that it's actually being studied to see if it can help bring down inflammation in those who suffer from inflammatory gut conditions. I also drink it at night because it's a natural source of melatonin. So what I typically do is I mix about 30 to 60 milliliters in about 100 milliliters of ice water, and it tastes great. I use pure tart cherry juice made from Montmorency cherries that's not made from concentrate, with no added sugar. Now remember, this is not a substitute for medicine, but healthy dietary habits should always be a part of the treatment plan.
Good morning, and good morning again. Welcome back to It's Due Time with Pastor Steph. And pardon our little technical difficulties, but we're back. And it is Wow Wednesday. Thank God we have made it safely to the middle of the week. And while, I always say people are trying to figure out what they're going to do to get over this part of the week, God has already answered our concern and He's given us Wow Wednesday. Yes. So if you're in the room, I would love to say good morning to you. Hey, good morning, our friend Terrence. Good morning, Terrence. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We got our girl Ketty in the room. Good morning, Ketty. How are you? Oh, Miss Charlene, I haven't seen you around for the last couple of days, and I missed you. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you? We got our girl Teresa in the room. Good morning, Teresa. How are you? And Serge. What's going on, Serge? Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. and the ladies who keep us up and running each and every day, who fight the technology to make it happen. Let's say good morning to Shantice. Hey, Shantice. I look forward to seeing you in a second. And we will say good morning to our girl, Anika. Hey, Anika. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, like I said, we do not have our girl Vivian on with us this morning, but she's doing okay. And we will have our socially conscious segment with Shantice. Now, I don't know if we still got a little technical difficulty, but we're going to hope for the best. Let's say good morning to our girl Shantice.
Good morning. How are you, Steph?
I am well, thank you, Shantice. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good, good, good. Thank you for filling in for your girl, Vivian.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you what I ask her every week. What you got for us today?
Today on Socially Conscious, we have the news that we are following. And this was some very, very, very interesting news today. So we have Mr. Zelnor Myrie. Now, for those who follow the politics, then you've heard of him before. If you haven't, like me, I don't follow it as much, or you don't really know the names that are not mainstream as much yet. But we have State Senator Zelnor Myrie, and he represents parts of Brooklyn, New York, and he's actually served in the New York State Senate since 2019. And it's kind of funny because, when you think about the ages, the presidents, they tend to have to be a certain age range. I think they have to be, late 40s, 50s, something like that. He is actually 39 years old this year. So he's doing it. And he has a plan to run for mayor for the city of New York. That's his plan. And he plans on creating 1 million new homes across the city of New York within the next 10 years. He plans on narrowing in on gun violence prevention, where they'll be solving every shooting case. And that'll be the main focus of his administration. And he is also focusing on free universal after-school programs, which Pastor Steph speaks about a lot in regards to these schools. Well, the state and the city claiming they don't have any funds. Meanwhile, we need these after-school programs for the students, for the children, and yet there's never any money. So just ensuring that that's not a problem anymore. His plans also include regaining enough staff to have the NYPD fully staffed. So remember, there were a whole lot of cops that they lost because they quit for whatever the reasons are. Well, his plans is to restore that, as well as changing the response to people experiencing mental health issues. And he is going to solve that by providing resources and housing with clinical support. So I found that very, very interesting because, again, as a whole, as a mass, that's not something that I've heard of the politicians really focusing on. So that's actually someone who is throwing their name in the hat to now become our next potential mayor. So we're going to have to make sure we stay up on it. Again, his name is Zelnor Myrie. He is young. He's a millennial. So millennials are still out here doing it. And we just have to make sure that we're paying attention to the things that they say that they want to focus on. Very, very interesting. Okay, next we have an MTA conductor who was attacked. And again, we think about all of the reports that we've been getting in regards to crime is going down. Where, sir? Because every time we turn around, we're hearing how crime is going up and up and up. So early yesterday, Tuesday afternoon, a 36-year-old female MTA train conductor was slashed across the left side of her face. Now, this took place at Whitlock Avenue subway train station, which is located in the Bronx. Reports state that she was looking up and down the platform, so they didn't say whether she was standing on the platform or whether she was actually on the train, but she was surveying up and down the platform when the attacker came up and slashed her in the face. Unfortunately, he was not apprehended. He is still out on the loose, and the cops are still out searching for him. So those who ride the subway, you have to make sure you are very careful, because unfortunately, this is what we're experiencing right now. Okay, that not only are the passengers not safe, but the conductors are not safe. So whether her head was hanging out, because, you know, we see that as the train is approaching the station, they're out, their head is sticking out surveying. We have to make sure that we're really careful, because this is the mindset of some of the people who are standing on the platform. Okay. Next, there is a new bill being passed through New York State Senate. The New York State Senate passed the Compassion and Reproductive Equity Act, which is also known as the CARE Act. Now, this CARE Act is a policy that has been recently put in place to ensure basic care for incarcerated pregnant and postpartum women, as well as their babies. And this act will include medical care during labor, during delivery, timely access to medication, and appropriate access to hydration and nutrition, which is, of course, recommended by all medical practitioners. We do have a quote from Senator Salazar, which reads, quote, "All infants and their mothers, including those behind bars, deserve access to basic health care. Yet New York's prisons and jails continuously deny incarcerated pregnant individuals adequate prenatal care, postpartum care, and care for the babies. In fact, nearly half of pregnant incarcerated individuals receive no prenatal care, which increases the likelihood of infant mortality, premature births, and NICU placements. The CARE Act is a step to break these harmful patterns, achieve reproductive justice, and ensure incarcerated pregnant people and their babies are treated with dignity," end quote. So again, these issues are to address all of the needs of the pregnant women and all of the needs that they are facing. And this will, of course, include nutritional deficiencies for those who know, or who those who have to be reminded, like I had to be reminded, how much nutrition pregnant women need to make sure that they have. So this will address the limited food options and the inadequate access to all the healthy foods that need to be in the prisons, because lack of this negatively impact the health of the pregnant woman and, of course, the development of the fetus. This will also include addressing the mental health issues that a lot of the pregnant women, experience. Of course, you're pregnant, and then on top of that, you're incarcerated. And they're stating that the incarceration and the stress of the pregnancy can contribute to the mental health challenges for all of the pregnant prisoners, requiring specialized support and care. So this bill, this CARE Act, will ensure that they address all of this. And now for our wow story of the week. There is a toddler who is feared to have been thrown in the Bronx River by, 2-year-old Montreal Williams. It's a great chance that he has been thrown into the Bronx River, which is located near the Brooklyn Expressway in the Bronx, by his 20-year-old father. The NYPD, there was some NYPD divers on site, and they've been focusing their search under the expressway as the investigators have just canvassed the whole area. There is surveillance footage of the father with the child, with the 2-year-old, alongside the river, as well as surveillance showing his name is Montreal, not Montreal. Montreal's father throwing a black bag into the river. So you're seen on camera by the river with the baby, the 2-year-old. And there's also video of you throwing a black bag. Now he's 2, so how big did the bag have to be? Not so big. So they're saying that little Montreal, he vanished back on May 9th. after he had a custodial visit with his father. Pastor Steph just went over this not too long ago. Well, I think yesterday, day before yesterday. The next day on May 10th, the 20-year-old father and his mother that he was living with had some big fight. They didn't state what the fight was about, but the grandmother, his mother, offered up a couple of quotes. She stated, quote, "Me and him had a conflict. I'm in my room. My cousin told me that my son took the baby. I went downstairs to chase him. He was gone. From that day, I was trying to search for my grandson." Said, so the mother of the father stating that she did go to the police after they had the argument, but she said, "I went to the precinct and they did not help me." Okay. Then about almost a month later, on Sunday, June 8th, the child's mother, who is 17 years old, confronted the 20-year-old father. And when she confronted him, he pulled a knife out on her. So I think it's safe to say that this probably happened before. And then he went on to say to her that he threw the child into the river. And that's what prompted the 17-year-old mom to call the cops. So the judge did lock the father up mainly because he was not able nor willing, not that he wasn't able, but he wasn't willing to give up the whereabouts of the child, even though he was the last one with the child. And he is now being held, but not yet held with criminal charges. And authorities say he has refused to speak any further and give any further details to any of the detectives nor the family court as to what has happened to 2-year-old Montrell Williams. So we just need to make sure we keep him up in prayers. But this is the news that we have been following. Make sure if you have any news that you would like V to report on, you contact her on Facebook. Her name on Facebook is Vivian BM. Thanking you so much, loyal viewers, for tuning in. And thank you, Pastor Steph.
Thank you, Shantice. Thank you for filling in the gaps. Ooh, we got some stories here. Interesting, socially conscious stories. Oh, we can jump right into this thing. From what I know, if we've got our lady Tamika on with us, then I say, let's get this party started. Good morning, Lady Tamika.
Good morning. Happy wow.
Oh my goodness. Oh, we got a good morning from our girl Anika, and we've got Terrence, who says, "Wow, that's crazy, putting a baby in a bag and throwing it over the bridge." Yeah, we're going to talk about this particular story. I did get this story sent to me as a suggestion to review it, and I have not had an opportunity to do so, but here it is. Let's start from the top. We've got our state senator, Zelnor Myrie, who is throwing his hat in the ring as mayor. He's focusing on more homes, gun violence, free universal after-school programs, regaining the staff that the police force has lost, and mental health patients, getting them some housing and clinical support. He looks like he's really focusing on some concerns that we really need here. And I haven't heard these particular items on the roster of concerns for a while. Yes. Lady Tamika, what say you?
I think it's a beautiful thing. We need it. On this show, we often talk about all of the concerns that the public at large need. And to hear somebody addressing those things, I think that's a beautiful thing.
Okay. Shantice?
Yes.
What say you about these particular items?
it's amazing to have someone focus on this. And I love the fact that it's a millennial and a millennial on this side of the fence. Amen. Hallelujah. Because it goes to show that he's thinking outside of the box. You know, like you just stated, Pastor Steph, you know, everyone focuses mainly on, or at least what they make public as to what they're focusing on are the same typical things. You know, again, the mental health, you know, I'm going to provide stable housing for them and clinical support. What? I've never heard that, you know, especially coming from this generation or younger. So I think it's amazing. It'll definitely help to separate him from the rest. I'll tell you that.
Okay. I have heard this name before, Zelno Myri. I believe he came up in a conversation that we've had here already regarding, he did. And that's the time when we were talking about Adrian Adams. So what I'd like to do is we have an election actually coming up this, I believe it's the 24th of this month. And I'd like to really take the time to go over some of the items and the individuals who are actually running in this particular area, you know, because the face of mayoral campaign has definitely changed.
Yes.
I see very little people on the other side of the fence. There are more of us. There are more women involved now. You know, I've walked this, you know, the avenue and the boulevard, and you see all these signs in the windows now. And I kind of smiled because I was like, wow, I remember a day where it was all on the other side of the fence. I remember a day where there were no women, you know. So we're coming up, and to hear that the millennials have actually gotten to the age where they can actually sit in these seats. You know, I'm like, yo, this is great. Now here's my thought. Lord, when the Z's come into play, ooh, yeah, please stay alive long enough while I'm here, because when the Z's come around, boy, it's going to be a whole different ball of wax. I'm looking at more homes, gun violence, free universal after school programs, regaining the staff to the police force, you know, the mental health, the mental illness, you know, issue being addressed, and their housing, you know, being addressed. And my prayer is that these people actually run, win, and do what they say they're going to do. That's always the problem. You know, I don't know if all of you remember, but Adams, that's one of the reasons why people are so annoyed with him, because some of the stuff that he said he was going to focus on, and people got all excited, we never saw hide nor hair of it. Instead, we're hearing about $30 million in greenery, all that kind of nonsense. So here you have someone who's actually saying, hey, I want to put free universal after school programs into place. And here the person who actually has the $30 million, ladies, who could actually do that right now. That's the furthest thing that's even happening now.
Yep.
So we're gonna hope and pray that Zelno Myri, Ty Hankerson, you know, all these people who are running for even the local council, and you know, these local seats are paying attention to these things, because it starts here. It starts on this level. To Lady Tamika, how important is it that the people on this level, the city council people, pay attention to all of these things before we even get to the mayor?
You know, a lot of people don't realize, you know, you always, you know, especially in our neighborhoods, you know, you got people voting for presidents, but you don't realize how crucial your city council people are, because they're honestly what happens. You know, they're the footwork of what happens in our neighborhood. You know, and
Mhm.
I always look at that. You know, I talk to people and I'm like, you know, I talk to some people and they don't even know who their city council people are. You know, and they don't even know when it comes to voting, they don't know their district, they don't know the information that's crucial to making things happen in your own neighborhood. You know, something that affects me may not necessarily affect you in your
Right,
neighborhood.
right, right, right,
And can make things happen. You know, they can open up windows for grants and for resources to be to be filtered into your neighborhood. You know, I also pin that with, you know, our census. You know, people get the census and they throw it away. They don't understand how important that information is. They're trying to get footwork. They're trying to get information. How many people are in your household? It's not just to be nosy. It's to help you get what you need.
right, 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 right. Shantice, this is urgent. These items are urgent, but it has to start at a much lower level than the mayor.
Yes, it has to start with, as Lady Tamika just said, the everyday citizen caring about when the elections are coming up. You know, again, like I said, it's long ago the days of us being able to be completely oblivious to when it comes to politics. It doesn't mean you have to be, I'm following every debate and I'm watching this, but we have to have a high level of awareness now because it's being really shown now. Like every decision that we help to make is going to affect us. You know, so for those who don't feel the importance to vote, and unfortunately, no, we don't have the good pickings, to choose from. However, we still need to be aware and then do our part in holding whoever's elected accountable, because that's part of the reason why they're able to just slide under the radar without doing so much, because everyone's just throwing their hands in the air, especially, millennials. This generation is like the last generation that would really have a good chance of really speaking up, because we're in that middle where we understand the nonchalant attitude and we understand the attitude that says, I need to know, I need to hold so and so accountable. So we have to make sure that it starts with us, those who can vote. Make sure you know how to read. So when things come across, we read it. Make sure we're paying attention to these ads. These ads, I don't know how many people are paying attention to these ads are even different now. A lot of these candidates are telling on themselves. Like, and it's about, they paid for this. You paid for this? You paid to show how you're not a good candidate? Well, thank you for letting me know. That, it's not even like they were before. So we really have to make sure we're doing our part.
Well, one of the reasons why they have to say now, this is this, like you said, the evolution of all of this stuff. One of the reasons why they have to say all of this now is because at one point there was a lot of slander put out there. They didn't know the origin of where these ads were coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So now they mandate that when an ad comes out, you have to say, and I approve this, because you have to put your stamp on it. They have to know that you're aware, you're responsible, you're taking ownership, that you are admitting that you understand and you have said these things. So that's one of the reasons why. And again, here we are with a millennial, Shantice, Vivian, they're the millennials of the Due Time crew. And yes, this millennial generation, these Ys are the ones who are in that really weird spot, because they have a lot of the upbringing of the exes, and now they are feeling some of what the Z's are feeling, but they kind of still got their foot in the foundation of yesterday, not just the technology of today. So it's going to make a difference, because it's funny, I went to my granddaughter's show, and I was looking at the parents of the children, who were in the show, and it was the millennials. It really wasn't us. We're the grandparents. At 58, I'm the grandparent of the 10-year-old. So it was so interesting to watch all of them now. And I was like, wow. I knew some of these kids when they went to school with my girls. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, wow, this is the evolution of it all. So to hear, Zelnor Myrie say, hey, I'm concerned about universal after school programs. Yeah, because he's probably a parent who's, this is his concern now. Who's going to watch his kid after school? You know what I'm saying? Who's going to do these things? It seems like the ones that are above, they seem to forget these were some of our biggest challenges. When Shantice and Shawnice were coming up after school, there were nothing. They were latchkey kids. They had to come home on their own. By the time Tamasia came along and there was she needed after school care. I had after school care, and it was free. And that was the beginning of this after school, business. So Zelnor Myrie and his counterparts, they need this here because they're the ones that have the children who need the after school care. So they're the ones who they are looking at the police. Who's going to police my kids? Who's going to police my neighborhood? It seems like, we have fallen away in this X generation of some of these concerns. And, those above us, the baby boomers, they're leaving us. And, this is the important phase. These wives are actually now in the seat with a voice. So I'm really hoping and praying that they do what they need to do. Like I said, so I'm going to try to fit in next week an opportunity for us to actually get some of the history and some of the focal points of them running for city council and things like that, and going back to, what's important. Yes, like the ladies have said, these city council people, these assembly people, they are the ones who are our voice. We're unhappy with the mayor. Okay, so we're unhappy with the mayor. So now we need to press our local people, because these local people are the ones who are going to be now running for mayor.
Yes.
So we gotta, find and put our ducks in a row. Oh, we got a check-in from Miss Grace. Good morning, Miss Grace. That's 2 days in a row. I'm excited. Woo! How are you? Thank you so much for joining us. We are in our socially conscious segment, and we are talking about the MTA conductor who was attacked yesterday. The 36-year-old female slashed in the Bronx, and she's looking up and down the platform, and she gets slashed by somebody who is actually intending to ride the train. We're talking about evil. We're talking about mental illness. We're talking about these people who are going to be sitting in these seats that make a difference, and who put our attorneys, our what's the attorney? Oh my goodness. The DA, thank you. Yes. These people in place, and or they assist in putting these people in place. And this is one of the reasons why, Tamika, Lady Tamika, what are we talking about here? The lady's just doing a job.
And our subways and our buses are nothing like what I ever recall, and I do occasionally, and I mean occasionally ride the train, and just the fiber of the atmosphere is entirely different. I remember back in the day where, we, in my former life, get up on, go somewhere, you party hardy, it's late at night, you're not worried about things, you could go to sleep, literally, like head back, all of that. Now, you scared to nod off because at any moment you could be attacked. My current train station, that's where I am, is now above the ground, and there's no wall. So I have to stand there, and you don't want to stand too close to the edge.
Right.
At any time, and at a time when everybody is concerned about being thrown over, you stand more of a chance of being thrown over. So you looking in front of you, you looking behind you, you decide maybe it might be better to stand here. You start looking around your circumstances, your situations, and in the day and age when everybody is plugged into their phone, I always said that is not the time to not be aware. Some people are so plugged into their phone, they don't see what's going on the left, the front, the right, the back. That is one of those times where you have to be on guard at all times. And then when you get on the train, you realize that most train cars don't have the benefit that we used to have. You used to be able to, okay, you don't like this circumstance? Okay, fine, I'm gonna go to the next car. And you didn't have to wait to the stop. Now you're on the train and you're literally held at the mercy of whoever's causing the issue, whether it's smoking, because I've been on a train car where I got to deal with your smoke, whether it's cigarettes or weed, the whole entire ride until I get to the next stop. And if it's a train where there's express, you got 2 and 3 stops that you've passed, and I got to inhale your food. I got to inhale food, and so I am so concerned, and the fact that somebody is looking out for things that people can't see underneath the earth, as opposed to coming on the train with your security and all of your enforced people saying, oh, there's no circumstances on the train. You don't ride the train, so how would you know?
Ooh. Go ahead, girl.
I feel her anger.
You say, pop to the people.
And I don't even ride the train.
Shantice, the lady's just doing her job. We've been talking about MTA more often recently and the stupid things that they have done. But here's somebody just doing her job.
I was just trying to envision, again, when we see the train approaching and you see, can you hear me? Okay. When you see the train approaching and you see the conductor, he or she has her head out, and I was always curious what you're looking for, but I guess that's procedure because all of them do it. And just imagine someone. I mean, it just never dawned. I was just like, what you looking for? But just imagining someone running up on you and just slashing your face. And you're on the train, and whether if the train is moving, you can't even hop out like that to, get them. Or if it happened as soon as the train stopped, you probably in such shock. And it's like, wait a minute, what just happened here? So and then if you're a conductor for whatever reason, sometimes the conductors may be on the platform and someone just runs up on you and just slices you, it's just, and then you're a female on top of that. It's like, what is happening here? I just wanted to come to work. And we were just speaking on that, someone I know who worked for MTA for 5 years. And, he was saying one of the things that had him say, okay, I'm done, I'm ready to quit, is the fact he was like, I realized how long I'm underground. And he was like, I was like, no, this is just too much pressure to be underground. And it's just to think that you can't even stand on the platform and be safe. You got to worry about someone running up on you with a box cutter or whatever he used to now slice you or stab you. It's just like, where is the peace? And now it's the warm weather, so you're not bundled up with layers or with coats. So if someone tried to stab you, it's an immediate, they're puncturing your skin. It's just way too, I really feel for these MTA workers, because it's optional for us to take the train, most likely. We may have options. We may have to take a longer route. But if this is their job, what options do they have?
Yeah. We got to check it from our elder Nitisha.
Good morning.
We miss you and love you too. Where you been? We would love to have you. Last week we had Pastor Kim with us. So please, whenever you get an opportunity, don't forget us little people. We pray that all is well with you. For those of you who don't know, Elder Natisha was a staple in our ladies panel on Wednesday morning. And we miss her so much. So thank you so much for giving us a shout out. We love you. We miss you. And we sure hope to see you soon. All right. All right. We're talking about this MTA conductor who, was slashed. She says, send me the info and I will definitely. God spares, girl. We holding you to that. We definitely will hold you to that. So God spares. We will see you next week. Ooh, okay. I'm already shivering. I'm so excited. We've been talking about the MTA workforce and the employees and some of their shenanigans and habits and things like that. And Shati said this is their job. We can take the train, the bus if we want to, and we can take, another mode of transportation. However, if these people are not in place, then that means nothing to us. To take a train, how? To take a bus, how? We can't do it ourselves. And to think that I'm just here doing my job and here I have someone just slash me, that really must be something traumatic. I'm sure you didn't see it coming. And it's, Shati says, what are you looking for? Girl, they're looking to make sure the platform is clear. Where your head at? They got to make sure that that everybody is safe. But you really understand the severity of these type of things that go on with them and how they risk their lives. Some of the stories that we've been hearing of late of what they've been enduring. Listen, being underground is already brutal enough.
Yes.
And now you being on the train is brutal enough because you're kind of locked in, to whatever is going on. If you're in that booth as a conductor and God forbid something is going on the outside, it's anybody's guess what needs to be done. Whether you stay on the inside and alert the authorities, whether you have to come out and address issues, that's a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And we give God thanks for those who are, on that job and who are doing a job and doing it well. And they're just like everybody else who goes to a job. They're there to do their job. And to think that I can't even just simply look up and down the platform to ensure that all of the passengers are okay or anyone who's on the platform is okay. And I have to worry about if somebody's going to cut me or someone's going to hurt me, or is my life in danger? Am I safe? That's a lot of concern. To be worried about the passengers and worrying about yourself. It's a lot. So we definitely need to keep them lifted up in prayer. As many people, it's almost like the cops. Yeah, we know a lot of them are just, out of sorts. They're just disrespectful. They're just criminals themselves. Mm-hmm. However, there are the police officers who are here to do the right thing, to serve and protect. And we have to rely on these people. So, just covering them with prayer, keeping them lifted before the Lord, because to get back on that job and to do that again, man, that's gonna be some doing. And who knows how long she's gonna be out.
Right.
Who knows how long she's gonna be out of work before she can actually get, the courage to actually go back on that job. We've got the CARE Act, this new bill that's being passed through the Senate now, where it's focusing on the ladies, and it's the terminology that you use, Shanti. I don't know if you use it on your own. If it seemed like you were reading for them who are pregnant, or for those who are pregnant. Just say women. Just say the pregnant women in prison. just the terminology. I was like, wow. They have very little prenatal care. They're limited on the food options in prison, and they need to step their game up. And how important is this? People just figure they're in jail. You're in jail. So what? Should that be the focus, or should that be the mindset, Shantice?
Should it be the mindset that this is what they're focusing on?
Of people, no, of people. A lot of times they just throw you in jail, and the reason why what this is probably coming up is because of the lack of care for the pregnant women incarcerated.
Absolutely. Again, as it was stated yesterday, we can determine the conditions of those incarcerated, male or female. It's not up to us to now say, well, you don't deserve this. No, you don't deserve the benefits, the pleasures, the luxuries, as if you were outside. But you're talking about women who are pregnant, who are carrying another life. So do we now mistreat? So even if you didn't care about the woman, you're now going to mistreat this fetus, this baby, because of what the mother did. No, they still need to be cared for. They don't need no filet mignon, but they can't be eating no slop, either. You have to care for those. You already know being incarcerated is stressful enough. Now I'm incarcerated with someone growing inside me. Hormones are all crazy. I'm in here probably fighting, or whether it's verbally or whatever. The living conditions are already crazy. No, this is something that definitely needs, the concerns, because now you don't take care of this child. Now this child is born with all kind of defects, whether mentally, emotionally, physically, and now this child grows up in society to what? Now get locked up too? Because it all starts with things like this. It starts with how the mother eats, how the mother, moves, and the decisions that she makes. Unfortunately, she's locked up, so already she didn't make the best decisions. But it's not up to you, the powers that be, to now say, well, they don't deserve the proper prenatal care because they're in here. So it is what it is. No.
All right, Lady Tamika, how concerned should they be about the conditions that a pregnant woman is, enduring while she's incarcerated?
I think it's a wonderful thing that somebody is taking something like that into account. When you think about someone just outside of just pregnancy, being incarcerated, let's say females, there are concerns. If you don't have someone who is able to place money on your books, you are basically at the mercy of those that are there. And we think about, just think about women in general. There are things that we in general need, and I have serviced the prisons through a church that I used to be a member of when I lived in a different state. And we would provide them with the basic necessities: shampoo, lotion, toothpaste. You can't provide them with a toothbrush because, when you send it that way, they have a fear that somebody will take a toothbrush and try and turn it into a shank.
Right.
So that's
A
something
weapon.
that we would not be able to do. We provided sanitary products. You don't think about stuff like that, and now we're talking about a woman now who is with child. So can you imagine the food that she would have to, subject herself to? You need green vegetables. I can't fathom what they're subject to in food, because a lot of times when you get to that point and you've been incarcerated, unfortunately, they don't treat you as a person. And so the fact that somebody is looking out for somebody who is with child, give them the necessities that they need, provide them with the food, provide them with the necessary care, the checkups, vitamins, stuff that will help their womb, that baby, come into this world without birth defects, because they have the needs that they should be getting, is a wonderful thing. And I think that it's an amazing thing that somebody finally is looking out for those who may not be able to pay it in finances.
Absolutely. I'm going to share something with you all. Yesterday and other days I've talked about when I was locked up, arrested, not locked up, arrested. When I was, for those of you who don't know, you go through phases, different steps as you're moving to get to arraignment. And I would say it had to be maybe about the third room. That's the longest wait you have there. And that's the one I said, well, I was over in the corner. I found my little spot in the corner. I had contacts in, and I had been crying, so I couldn't. The contacts were very, very blurry. I couldn't. And boy, I'm telling you, to be arrested and be behind bars, and just we really do not appreciate what we have when we're not in locked up. Trust me when I tell you. I couldn't see. It was constantly blurry. And when your eyes dry and you're blinking, it makes it even more difficult. And there's a distance between where the back bench was and the gate. And the gate is like I won't say like a fence. It has like, the spokes. So you have little triangles. And I couldn't figure out what was I looking at that was in there was some white stuff inside of that was sticking through the thing, and I didn't want to get up and go see. I didn't want to go look. I just kept blinking and blinking and trying to figure out. So finally, I had to go to the bathroom. And so all you have is you have this big room, and you have one wall, I would say that's maybe about this tall to you if you're standing. And behind it is the toilet. And of course, we instantaneously look for toilet paper. You're a woman, so you're looking for the toilet paper to be hanging. Why can't the toilet paper hang? So I was like, oh my gosh, where's the toilet paper? So I go, and that's when I figured out what was sticking out through the actual holes. There was no toilet paper there any longer. It was just tampons and pads. So I asked the, COs, can I have some toilet paper? So she takes the roll and she whips it around her hand and she sticks it through for me to take it. And that's what she was doing. So she just started doing that. I'm like almost in tears. We don't realize what happens when you're behind bars. To think of a woman being pregnant, I'm telling you of just that experience. That quick, 36 hours, that was a portion of my experience. If I were to really just describe as a woman, what you're faced with.
Yes, ma'am.
To think that she could be in there pregnant, whether she got herself there or not, while she's there, without thinking about all of that, and having 3 children myself, and going that journey of pregnancy. They're on you about taking your prenatal, your iron and your vitamins, and eating well, and just sleeping properly. And to think that she's there and she can't even eat properly, because we know the condition that they keep prisons. We know that they don't feed them properly. We know that the trays are not kept clean. And this is what they too endure. And to think that you're carrying a child and you don't have just the bear stuff. There are women out here who are healthy, free, and they don't go to the doctor properly. Literally, at their own admittance, they don't go to the doctor. Oh yeah, I'll go. Are you taking your iron? No, I'll take them. You take your, no, it's just such this blasé and cavalier attitude. And to think that these are women on the inside, they have an option. You really think that they provide prenatal vitamins, prenatal iron pills, and proper food in there for them? No, because the mentality is they deserve to be there. So, oh well, if they didn't get themselves here, then, oh well. And there are times, sometimes you hear me say things like that. However, I reserve those statements for certain things. And this is important. Why? Because the baby didn't ask to come here.
Right.
That woman is the line of defense for that child. And if mom does not take care of herself, you trying to figure out what we are in a season of autism galore. Tamika, you're an older woman. You're a little older than Shantice. You know good and well that's something we never heard of back in the day on a regular basis. These children have allergies. You're 2 and you're allergic to everything. You can't eat fish and you can't eat dairy. This is all starts from mom. We never heard the level of infancy deaths and illnesses coming out the womb. Where do you think that starts from? That starts from mom. Now, there are some women who just don't take care of themselves during pregnancy. They're smoking, they're drinking, they're using drugs, they're doing all kinds of things. And there are women who take care of themselves and their children come out with problems. And I'm going to tell you something. It is a very, very fine line to what happens and your child is fine and your child is not. I look at my granddaughter all the time and she's dancing and she's singing and she's well and she's, she can cut up and she acts so silly. And I look at her and the tears come in my eyes and I say, thank you, God. Thank you, God. There's a little girl in her class who's allergic to everything. Mm-hmm. Everything. When they bring stuff to school for the children, like parties and stuff, she can't partake. She's allergic to everything. So this CARE Act, this is really vital that this stuff happens for these moms to be, or post-care. It was recently, maybe about 5-6 years ago, I heard that it takes 4 years for a woman's body to repair and recover from carrying a child for 9 months from that delivery process. 4 years. You're pregnant 9 months, but it takes you 4 years for your body to get back in line. And that's supposedly. Now imagine these women who have children back to back to back to back to back to back to back. Mm-hmm. What does it look like? What happens to you? What was wrong? What's going on the inside of you? So you see me getting a little emotional because when I tell y'all that was the most traumatic 36 hours of my life, I meant that thing. And I think about women who are there and they have to stay there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm wishing y'all to just kill me. Just put me on suicide watch because this is no joke. And these poor babies are going through all kinds of things inside of mom's womb. And, to get them, we don't want, like Shanti said, should they live in a palace? No, but the food, and that's what I've always said about being incarcerated. Just make sure these people eat properly and they have a decent place to stay. You ain't got to make their lifestyles, or They ain't got to be living in, the palaces, but just the basic stuff. And we know that the basic stuff is not happening. Let me see. I think I saw something pop up. Let's see. Terrence says, agree, Pastor. We do not appreciate the things we have now without being locked up until it's gone at or no longer have access to. It's sad. We have a check-in from our girl Vivian. Good morning. Good morning, V. How are you? Thank you for joining us this morning. She said, if you gave birth to a healthy child, you really need to thank God because it's rare these days. We had Teresa and Vivian on, last year or very early this year with the what teachers need you to know. And the two of them are in the early childhood stages. And they see how these, things exist in our babies. They're dealing with the younger set. They weren't like Brother Al and Pastor Crystal who were in the junior high school arena. So they get to see how early. And Teresa is, she's special ed. And they're babies. It's a class. She's a teacher 12 to 1. 12 children in that class are special needs children. How many people in Vivian's class are special needs children or who have maybe not even diagnosed? Well, where do you think this stuff starts from? It starts in the womb. So thank you, for giving me a moment to kind of share that with you. But I wanted to say that to let you know this stuff is real. This stuff is real. And when I say, when we talk about it, I go, "Ooh, that's the worst 36 years of my life." Yeah, because it's bad. It's bad. And again, that's just the beginning. It's just the beginning process. They really don't. They really don't take care of you. Oh, we're talking about the toddler again. We're talking about the babies who are suffering at the hands of parents. This dad who told mom, who's 20 years old, she's 17, that he threw the baby into the river. They did see him on surveillance throwing a bag into the water. So it's very likely that, this is exactly what happened. His mom went to the police to tell them, something was wrong. And she said she got no help. Tamika, what are we talking about here? We've gone from, in the prison system to, okay, the child is out. And now the parents have to be mentally stable enough to take care of these children. And here's why.
We just talked about children yesterday. 24 hours, literally. And here we are again with women. Please, pretty please, I beg of you, I plead with you. If you're having a relationship issue with this man, please don't send your children to spend time supervised or unsupervised. Within 24 hours, we're talking about 2 children, one yesterday, one today.
And one last
week.
No. There was what? It was, what is today? Today's Wednesday. We talked about one. Was it Monday or Friday? One of the two. We talked about the father with the 3 girls.
Right. And we're not talking about children being wounded. We're talking about children dying. Don't assume, oh, well, what's the worst that I just talked to? What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen is you now going to a funeral for a child that you had not intended to do. You just decided, well, let me just, maybe clear my head, let him, our relationship is over. Let him take care. That is the worst thing that you can do. Find somebody, a neighbor, a friend, someone that you really trust, because you are giving them your precious cargo, your children, your seed, somebody who has benefit for our future. Please be wise with your decisions. Stop getting into these relationships and introducing your children immediately. Please take the time that is necessary. If you're not sure and you thinking sideways, then please don't invite your children into an environment like that. It's really toxic and it's detrimental to your life and to the children that you have given birth to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shantice.
Yes. It's making me think of a time I know someone who had a child and the father didn't want the child. But the mother had the child anyway. And there was talk about like the father spending time with the child. And I was like, and I didn't necessarily hear like the baby was he was gonna take the baby, you know, but like even I guess the father coming to her to sit, and that had me on edge. Just hearing that, and I'm like, listen, with all due respect, he don't want that child. Don't force him to be around that child. Listen, as the woman, you make the choice as to whether you're gonna abort or keep. You have to understand that when you decide to keep, you could be married. It's all on you. If you have a father who's willing to be there, just consider that a bonus. Unfortunately, you just consider that a bonus. But this is all on you as the mom. You are the first one with that child. You're the last one with that child. Even when the father, both of y'all could be in the house. Even when the father is tending to the child, you still over there looking over his shoulder. And this could be a good dad. We're not even talking about the deficient ones. This could be a good dad. But you as the mom, you're still, he could change the pamper, which my family have our own thoughts about that. But you can change the pamper and, you know, the mom is still hovering over or going behind and make sure he wiped the baby properly. You know, it's, you have to understand that this is what you raised your hand for. So now you're figuring, like Lady Tamika said, oh, I need a break. Or, oh, you need a break, all right. And now look at the break that you've gotten. Now you, more than likely, your toddler is not even alive. You know, that's scary. All because you're figuring, well, this is the dad. I should be able to. Yeah, you should be able to. But unfortunately, we have to realize the times that we're in. We have to realize the way people are. If women suffer from postpartum, just because that's not a thing publicly doesn't mean that's not a thing for men. There's obviously postpartum for the fathers. So, you know, you really have to just consider the fact that this has to be on me. And again, if you're blessed to have the bonus of a mom, sisters who are willing to literally come over or, you know, sit with you and give, you know, let you sleep or do whatever, then that's great. But we as women, we have to just really wrap our mind around, if I decide to have this kid, I am the sole proprietor of this child. Even if I'm married and this is a decent man, I am still the sole proprietor. So now, what do you think the terms are if you're not with the man? Or if y'all are just dating? You know, this is really on you. And these men can't handle it. Even if they want to, you know, even if they want to, they can't handle it. And the result is now these children are dead.
You know, here's what I found interesting in this particular story. When you said that when the dad snatched the baby and left the house, his mother went chasing him. And after a couple of days, she went to the cops. Why?
Right.
Why?
You knew something about your son.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Mm-hmm. Because you knew, you knew either he had a temper, he was unstable, something. Mothers and their sons, trust me when I tell you, if mom went running to the cops, mom knew something was off. Listen, she didn't only say after a couple of days when she didn't see the baby no more, she spoke to the mom, nobody knew. No, she said when she went chasing after him with the child. Now, a a mom, a guy who takes care of his child lovingly and
Oh, I'm sorry,
meticulously.
Pastor Steph. It was the day after the argument, and he left.
Mm,
It wasn't even days.
okay.
So that really puts a stamp on what you're saying.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's yeah. Why? Why? What happened that triggered something in mom's head that said, "I don't pay attention to the fact that it's been a day."
Mm-hmm.
You know, ladies, like these ladies have said, we talked last week, Friday, about the veteran who was married. They were separated or divorced, and they had 3 children. They were like 9 and 6 and 3, something to that, in that age range. We talked on Monday about the boyfriend who had broken up with the girlfriend, and she went to work and left the baby, the 2-year-old, with him, and he severed her spine because he was mad with the mom because she had broken up with him. They said that the dad, on Friday, we talked about, he had mental illness, some PTSD. They knew that he was unstable. It had dwindled down to one day. He could only have the children. He could only have those girls one day at a time. It wasn't like a normal visitation issue where you go spend holidays and weekends with the dad. No, they were down to one day that he could spend. And when he didn't come back, that one day with the girls, mom alerted the authorities and he had suffocated those girls. Listen, I'm fighting for your kids. First of all, hey, I'm going to go back a little bit. And I'm going to speak from personal experience. You see stuff in the very beginning that indicate that these people aren't stable.
Yep.
These people they're not good parenting options. Keep your legs closed so there are no oops. And make sure that does not happen. Look at what we're talking about. Look at what he's so unstable. He told the mother. Now you 17, he 20. He told her, I threw the baby in the water. For you to even get mad and say that out of spite, and you hadn't done it. But for you to have said it and you really did do it. Did this here? This just goes to show. This is not new. This is not new. All this stuff was going on. So listen, check this out. The baby is how old? 2?
Yes.
That means she's been messing with this boy since she was at least 15 years old. She's a baby herself. So when she was 15, he was 18. Already out your league. Already you're having a child. You're a baby yourself. Having a child, you already having a child at this time in your life. So from at least 14 years old, because there's 9 months of gestation. So from 14 years old, you've been sexing. And you had a baby from that early in your life. So already your maturity level is where?
Right.
As a child.
And his is worse. But
right.
Older.
Right. And you ladies are right. Stop leaving these kids. Let him take the child for a little while. No.
Pastor, this family has gotten on mothers for letting the biological father change the baby's pamper.
Yeah.
And
with no flags.
Right.
No flags.
Right. We know this man. We see him as a good man, a decent father. But as soon as we hear, I'm gonna go change the baby. No, we got it. We good. We got it. Especially if it's a little girl. And it's like, listen, no shade. We're going to train that baby from now that you don't even let daddy see down there. Okay? Because unfortunately, you could be good, But then when Uncle so-and-so claimed he gonna change or bathe her, and that's the uncle that molests her, it's really hard to teach certain children discernment. It has to be just a straight no. Like, no. Nobody. Oh, and now you got to even transfer that to the women. You have a little girl, you can't even just say, well, it's okay if me, auntie, grandma. No, you still got to be careful with that, because it's just too much going on. So yeah, this is just sad.
Yeah, this, and here's the other thing, Tamika, he's not talking. He's not talking. But he hasn't.
I see this differently as well, because my thing is, at 14 years old, and I understand that our youth are different, and it's hard to raise these newer children. They express themselves differently. But at 14-year-old, mom and dad couldn't stop you, to the degree, and I understand, you do what you do, and now you're pregnant with this child, with, I'm sure he had to have come to the house sometime. I'm sure he had to express something that mama should have said, not that one. You know how many times in my life my mama looked at somebody and said, that's what you dating? That's what you bringing home? You know how many times I have been completely mortified and embarrassed because I was like, Ma, this is boom boom. This is and she either did something in front of him that I was just like, oh my God, and I'm ever so grateful now, because those things have blessed me, because now I have a plethora of blessing in my husband, because the stuff that I was before him, oh, Jesus, don't let me tell you. But where was mom that said, not that one? Something had to have been said or done, or a lot of times when mom did say something, and you say, oh well, I'm going to do this anyway.
Right.
You are.
Right.
This looked you in the face and said to you, I took the baby and threw it in the river. And now I'm tight-lipped because you have, it's my word against yours. I'm sure she didn't concoct this story. My baby is gone. He said to me, he threw the baby in the river. And at that age, you don't know what to do. Even in my age, what would I do? You said to me, you threw my baby. Okay, so you got to go to the police. They got to go check this river, and we're talking about a moving, flowing body of water. We're not talking about a pool. There is no, no telling where this child could end up.
I'm just trying to. I'm sorry.
He's tight-lipped and ain't saying a word now.
I was trying to envision when Lady Tamika said, he said, I threw the baby in the river. And I'm trying to envision myself standing in front of you and you saying this to me, and the cops ain't coming to get both of us. Like, the cops, if I call the cops, it's to say, come and bring the ambulance, because one of us gonna get arrested and the other gonna die. I can't tell you who's gonna be in which vehicle, but we're gonna need both on deck. Why? What happened, ma'am? You'll find out when you get here. And it just, because I'm just like just picture someone standing in front and you're expecting to hear from them or see them with the baby, and you like as if I said, yo, I sent you for letters, what happened? Like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like you forgot something on the grocery list, and you gonna pull a knife out on me. I asked, where's Montrell? You pull a knife out already. Already. It done went from 0 to 100 real quick. Mm-hmm. Then you go talk about, I threw him in the river. And I got time to make a phone call to anybody? It's just like, what? So I can't even imagine the different ways of emotions and thoughts she went through. And you standing there with whatever knife or whatever, talking about I threw him, and now you ain't saying nothing. You ain't gotta say nothing. You already said it. What else do we need? They found the body in the refrigerator, guilty. It's just like, what else do you need to criminally charge him? You locked him up, but he's not charged as a criminal. How?
Right,
he told the mother.
Right.
He told the mother, I threw the
You're not
baby.
charged with
Remember,
anything.
the baby ain't here. What else what other puzzle pieces do we need to draw this conclusion? I'm like so lost. It's scary how people are literally living out the things in the Bible that God says was going to show us how people are going to act and be callous, just lovers of themselves. You have to be a lover of yourself to tell me as the mother, you threw my baby anywhere, across the room, in the bed, in the room. Like, you have to love yourself that much to buff your chest up to tell me that is bonkers.
It's, again, I'm listening to all of the account that you gave in the initial story. I'm listening to the things that you ladies are saying. And one of the things that just keeps coming up in my head is there were signs about all of this stuff.
Yes.
There was signs. He pulled a knife on you. This ain't the first time he didn't pull a knife on you. He pulled a knife on you so easily when you asked, where was the baby? That was a response. Right. There's this here mom, his mom, her mom, like Tamika said, she didn't brought him home. So, your friends, somebody, your cousin, your sister, somebody that told you, girl, I don't know about that one. He has exemplified something, where you and you as a young girl, you've been enduring this for a long time. All of this did not start just now. Again, in order for her to have a 2-year-old at 17, this is something she's been dealing with since she was about 14 with this individual.
Mm-hmm.
And when, I want to touch on something, everybody thinks that it's dating season. Everybody thinks that I can date. 14 years old, I can date. 14 years old, I can, I'm interested in a boy. We can't stop our kids from doing things that, when they're not in our company. We can't. The only thing we can do is give them the foundation and the tools to function outside of when they're with us. That's the only thing we could do. And keep them lifted in prayer. Take them to church. Get them introduced to God. I keep saying to people, and I want to talk about this for a minute. If this is, you don't want to give your children God, it couldn't get no worse. When people are so bent on, I don't want to go to church, I don't need God, I don't want God, God can't do nothing for me. My thing is, how could it be any worse? How can it be any worse than what you already gone through, what you don't already have, the headache you already got, the worries you already have, the hopelessness you're living in? How could it be any worse? And we don't want to give our children God. We don't want to give our children God. Now, there's an assumption here that she has not been to church. I'm not talking about her in particular. I'm talking about our children, period. The adults don't want God. That's why the children don't have God. I don't know, Shantice.
Well, I was given God from birth, and I started dating at 13. And you couldn't tell me I ain't know what I was doing. I was a veteran. I knew literally since 13. I knew my first boyfriend, I remember. And I even remember certain conversations that took place. And, like looking at these 13-year-olds now, they're babies. But when I was 13, I felt so much older. It's like when I think of myself as 13, 14, 15, I just felt so much. And I guess it's because that's just, the time you were in. But when you're an adult, like us millennials, like you said, Pastor Steph, we're actually the middle-aged adults now. And I'll never forget someone overhearing me say something to someone older, because I was 13 and there was a time I was dating an 18-year-old. I was dating, I didn't always date my age range. And I remember someone overhearing me say something to a guy. I was 13. And she started, when I tell you, laughed so hard. And she was like, you don't even buy your own drawers yet, little girl. What are you talking about? And I remember feeling so offended. Like, what you mean? Like I could say, yes, I do. What you mean that I wasn't? Like, what comeback did you have? Like, shut up. But you think you know everything. You think you can pace yourself. You expect, and don't let you have other friends who also have boyfriends, or you have a friend who's a couple of years older than you, and they call themselves schooling you. Now you really know. Now your mother really can't tell you nothing because I got, somebody a little older who's kind of coaching me, and that was my story. I had a close friend who's 3 years older. So I'm 13, she's 16. She's putting me on a certain thing. So now I feel like I'm a little more advanced than the average 13-year-old. But even with all of that and all of the stupid mistakes I've made, and again, when you don't break habits at a young age, you grow up to be 39, still dealing and battling with some of them bad habits. And I just think about all of the mistakes and consequences that I've had to endure. What would have happened if I didn't have God introduced to me as a baby, literally? What would happen even now as an adult when I'm still battling those habits, where I can now sit with Jesus? Literally, sometimes I got to sit and say, okay, Jesus, let's talk about this. You said, don't date right now. Thank you for reminding me why, because I'm still a little slow in that area. Amen. Thank you. Okay, thank you for allowing me to see that he's still slow. And he's even slower, not because I'm better, but because he's still rejecting you. See, I'm a come back, or I'm going to stick with you and be like, Jesus, reel me back in, because you know what I'm thinking right now. He's not willing to do that. And like you said, Pastor Steph, these kids, a lot of them want, if you talk to these kids by themselves, they want to go to church. It's the parents that's tainting them, that has them thinking church is boring. You can't, if you go to church, there's a bunch of can'ts. You can't, but if you just talk to the children, they're with it. So now you got to go around the parents. But again, like I said, you don't want to take care of these kids, and now they grow up to be the other set of incarcerated people. They grow up to be the other menace to societies. They grow up to be all of this. And it all boils down to, like you said, Pastor Steph, because you don't want to give them God. You don't see the importance for yourself. Right. So now, and because you know that you giving your child God means you giving you God. Because even if you just send your child to church, these children are going to come back and school you, and they're going to criticize you. You ain't trying to hear that. So you know what? Let me keep myself safe by not even sending them. So because it's almost like I'm sending my child to school, but I didn't finish school. Because again, I know a lot of millennial parents who didn't. And now my kid coming to me talking about, Mom, you don't know how to read that? I ain't trying to hear that. So you know what I do? I pop them in the mouth and tell them to shut up, do your homework. I'm not trying to hear, but yeah, it does all fall back to, you have to give your children the foundation of correction. And the foundation of correction is Jesus. And when they don't have that, look at what you end up with.
Absolutely. Tamika, jump on in here. We're talking about the fact that you don't want to give your child God. With all that's going on, you really still feel no need for your children to have God. How could it be any worse offering them God than what's going on out here now?
Absolutely. I have always been part of the village that helps raise a child. I don't have any children of my own, but, there was nothing for me. My house was always an open place for children to play. I had videos for children to watch, that gave them concepts, and unfortunately the structure of that, not for me, but, for a lot of people, is breaking down, because you don't want to expose your children to, that type of thing. Oh, I'll let them decide when they get older. And at this point, now they're incarcerated because they didn't have the training and the necessity, the tools to help them, get that type of mindset. They're labeled, mentally disturbed or disabled, and basically what you have done is you have done your child a disservice. You have crippled your child because they don't know the tools. They don't have, I think about, when I was young, everything was a life lesson. I'm sitting on a train. We just, me and my mom just riding the train. And, there happens to be a woman who's struggling with the stroller, trying to get off the train. And at that time, they didn't have any elevators. And she's like, you know what? This is what happens when you're young and you have to deal with, these are things, everything was a lesson. These, I understand that as a parent, you have a lot of responsibility, but you have got to teach your child the things that are necessary so that they have the tools, and God is the major.
Absolutely. Like I said to you all a couple of minutes ago, I ask adults this all the time. I'm looking at them spinning their wheels, running around, like a hamster. I was right, hamster in this wheel, and then I get anywhere. And I said, okay, so you've been invited to church, and you still saying no to God? Really? You just did this here, this right here. This ain't enough.
This is life,
right? How do I say, Shantice? And this is fun, right? It's like, yo, what do you need to get this here together? We're getting ready to close out here, Shantice. What's your parting words today?
Jesus is your friend. Act like it. Because with each of these stories, when you're thinking about the senator who's running, one in state senate who's running for mayor, the CARE Act that has just been put into place, the MTA conductor being slashed, and even this father trashing the baby. Jesus is the way. He wouldn't be able to have these innovative ideas. That woman would not still be alive. These pregnant women would not, now be getting the care that they need. And even with this baby being treated like this, the mom is still alive, the father's still alive, and I know it looks like, well, what does that matter? The baby's dead. But he kept them two for a reason. He could have let it be to where it was also another homicide, suicide.
That's right.
He just pulled the knife out, right? He didn't attack her. There's a reason why God did not allow it to go to that level as well. And anytime we keep telling God no thank you, he just sometimes lifts another finger off so we can see what life really looks like without him, with the no thank you. And I believe was it 2 Timothy, Pastor Steph? I can't remember the exact verse, but I think it's in 2 Timothy where it's the set of verses where God tells us how people are going to act in the last days. If y'all have not read that, please Google it. Just put 2 Timothy, what does the Bible say about how people act in the last days? It's going to pull up the verses. People are actually living this out. God's word is not fake. It is not a joke. You need to really take heed to what God is saying, making sure you don't fall in the category of the people you need to stay away from in the last days, because this is how you acting, and give yourself and your children to God, because that is the only way they're going to survive in school, at home, even with you. Because if you think you don't have the ability to snap, you're bugged. And in these streets, because as Pastor Steph says, you're not always with these children, especially once they get to school age. They're with other people more than they're with you 10 months out of the year. So we really have to make sure we're focusing on giving ourselves and our children to God, because otherwise this in some way is going to be our fate.
Thank you so much, Shantice, and my other Due Time crew members are gone, but thank you so much for your contribution into today's conversation, and we pray that you have a blessed day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking at Matthew 24, and I'm looking at verse 9. And it says, then they will deliver you up. These are Jesus's words. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. That's just one of the scriptures that Shantice was referring to. And again, that was Matthew 24. And I read verses 9 through 13. Tamika said something that was very common for me. That's very common for me. Everything I say to my granddaughter, I try to make it a lesson. And I said to her the other day, I said, I know you're tired of hearing, ma'am. I know you're trying to hear. I'm tired. You're tired of hearing my voice, because everything I'm turning into a lesson. I said, but I'm going to be honest with you. I said, you're 10, and I surely don't want you to grow up to be these people that I'm looking at right now. People who reject sensible things, people who reject logic, people who reject the word of God, people who reject sound counsel, people who reject guidance. It's falling on deaf ear, Mariah. And I want you from very early to learn to listen. I want you from very early to listen to what you're being told and lay it out before you, and begin to look around and watch. Because when God sends you a word, you're going to be able to see whether that word is sound counsel or not. He is not going to leave you perplexed and in some quandary, because God is a God of decency and order. He is not going to send you a word and you still all twisted and confused because you're looking at all of this stuff here. There is nothing God gives you before its rightful time. Whenever God gives you, it means that it is the time that you can absorb it and make sense of it. Now, for you, that may not be the case. For you, that might be, I don't understand. And, this is just too much. And yeah, I've heard people say that over and over again. I don't get it. I don't understand. And why would God, tell me all of this now? The Bible tells us over and over again that God delivers when it's time. He even talks about temptation. There is no temptation that is uncommon to man, but that God will not give a way out. That's for everybody. For everybody. So whether he gave that word to you before and it was in preparation for when this came up and you were able to act on it, or whether it was that happening right now and him giving you that open door right now, there's somehow or another. Because God is not a man that would lie. There is no way that he would say, I'm giving you a way out, and he would. No. Why? Again, I always love to quote this. He says, because I don't want to see anyone perish. This is his creation. I don't care how bad we are. He does not want to see anyone perish. So I'm trying my best to get to my babies. I'm trying my best. Because I'm looking at millennials, middle-aged people, elderly that are just, oh Lord, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe what I'm watching. That stuff is right there, and it is so foreign. It's right there, but it is so far-fetched. And again, look at the Bible. Look at what we just read. What is love? God just says all the time, this love that we know about, I love so-and-so. Explain what love is. Because see, there's some love going on in all of these twisted stories. Somebody would say, I love you so much that, I would rather kill you than to watch somebody else with you. That's how much they love that person. So we can't even explain what goes on in the mind other than what the Bible says. That it's that time that God says, when you reject me, Romans tells us that when we reject God, he's going to leave us to a reprobate mind. When we reject God, your life will decline. Because he says, I'm going to leave you to a reprobate mind. He doesn't say, I'm going to punish you. He didn't say, I'm going to cast you into, this world of aching. He says, I'm just going to leave you to you. This is us being left to us. Where sense is not sense. Logic is not logic. You can't make this stuff up. If you're in your wildest imagination, you cannot make this stuff up. And all God has done is just step back. So I'm going to leave you to you. Boy, when you think about what that means, that all God has to do is step back and leave you to you, and you're going to destroy you. Boy, I don't want God to take his hand off of Stephanie. Because I see what happens when I don't consult God. I see what happens when we think we got these answers. When it looks like this, so it must be that. Oh, well, I saw it look like this, so all I could think of, it had to be God. No. And I have gotten so drained from telling people, that don't mean it's God. That means that does not mean it's God. I'm sorry. You can think of a million, but you know why? Because that's what you want it to be. Because in our head, that's what we want it to be. Because in our eyes, that's what we want to see. Because in our ears, that's what we want to hear. We are still pursuing things that God has said, leave it alone. We are still pursuing things where God has said no. We are still pursuing things where God has said, that's not for you. And these are God's people. I even talk about the average life out here. But yet, God said it. Yet, God is showing it to me. Yet, that's what it means, Pastor Steph. Yes. I know it's God. When I listen to people who are so sure that they're sure that is God, and I'm looking at 900 other things that say this ain't got nothing to do with God. If this were God, there would be other things that may be in that would be in place. Stop being lovers of yourself and seek the true and living God. Understand that God will tell you and show you no at times because it's not for us. Stop. Just stop. Not only that, when you keep seeing something, you keep running into the wall, stop. Stop and shift gear. Stop. God don't keep us he's not going to keep us running into walls, but it's him. When are you going to wake up and realize that ain't God? God is not going to keep putting a brick wall there and telling us no. Sometimes we keep saying, oh, it's no temporarily. And I've had a point in my life where God he was telling me, take your hands off that. I heard him, take your hands off that. And I just thought it meant a different time. I mean, I'm not talking about anything detrimental, by the way. Because the stuff that's detrimental and God keep telling us to stop and we won't stop, that's another thing that's mind-blowing to me. It was a project that I was working on. And God said, take your hand off of it. And I just thought, oh, okay, well, I got some time. Maybe God is putting some things in place. And the third time, he said, I said, take your hands off that. And that's when I realized, like, oh. However, like I said, there are other times where God has indicated or said, the Spirit of the Lord has said, that's no. And I just step away. I just step away because I'm understanding that that's not for Stephanie now or ever. So watch God. God is very strategic. Watch God. God is not a God that will leave us in a quandary. God is not a God that will leave us walking around all confused and twisted. And no, when God says stop, stop. When God says go, go. When God says move, move. And trust me when I tell you, there are going to be many indicators that stop is final, that go is what he wants you to do. And I have personally had people upset because I've moved when God said move, or I didn't move when God told me to stop. Well, you know what I mean. I stopped when God told me to stop. And now people are upset because they have a different thing in mind for you. I'm sorry. I gotta do what the Lord tells me to do. There were some times where God has told me to stop doing something that I really wanted to do. And I'm like, okay, well, you said stop, so gotta give that one up. Trust God. Trust God, and you stop talking to you. And just sit down. And when God sends you wise counsel, it could be from anywhere. That wise counsel could even come from a child. Take what God is giving you, and you will not go wrong. You've been watching It's Due Time with Pastor Steph. Join us Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. where we discuss matters of the heart, mind, and spirit. As you go through your day, be sure to set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth. They will only serve as a distraction. Remember, prayer changes things. It's Pastor Steph signing off, and I want to thank my Due Time crew, the ladies, for always coming through big time. Thank you for hanging out with us and keeping that chat room live. Please do not miss this opportunity to accept Christ as your personal Savior right now. Please do not miss this opportunity to strengthen your relationship with the Lord right now, because later is not promised to any of us. Until tomorrow, God spares. We've got a guest coming to join us. Oh, make sure you tune into Therapeutic Thursday. Until then, I love you.